We stand in early 2026, and the signs around are unmistakable. The spirit of the age is manifest. The invasion persists in the heartland, tens of millions of alien enemies already established, fueled by the revolutionary NGO complex, in which the shadow government finds a center of gravity while in official exile. They continue to advance replacement economically, culturally, and electorally, a boon to the Revolutionary Democratic Party. Anarcho-tyranny defines daily life across much of the nation. Predators and rioters walk free, while elderly, non-violent, pro-life protesters languished for years under Biden-era sentences of decades in prison. Race-Marxist mobs invade churches with impunity, disrupting worship and intimidating congregants, finding no parallel enforcement to those long prison terms handed down for peaceful abortion clinic protests, despite being far more egregious violations of the same federal statutes. In cities like Minneapolis, anti-ICE protests escalated into Bolshevik-style mobs, tormenting random white citizens suspected of ties to Trump administration enforcement, chasing, harassing, demanding they produce proof of identity, and in some cases assaulting them. The scope of this sedition is vast, far beyond isolated acts. It encompasses coordinated networks across government agencies, courts, NGOs, academia, media, and tech platforms. It utilizes the actionable, strategic language of intersectionality, peaceful protest, and anti-fascism to coordinate, signal, and target. Thousands of actors, from street agitators to high officials, advance the overthrow incrementally. Yet bandwidth limits official response. Courts and prisons cannot process every violation, and 100,000 charges of seditious conspiracy is not achievable, however much it might be deserved. Strategic choices become necessary. Pursue charges where impact is greatest, not exhaustive. This reality may also force departure from traditional methods, inflicting terror on the evildoer, Romans 13's sword, and disincentivizing revolutionary resistance demands alternatives. Targeted, exemplary enforcement, public exposure and shaming, punishment by process, economic and social consequences, coordinated interposition by loyal magistrates. Half measures fail against scale. Only decisive asymmetric counters restore deterrence. A key tactic in their arsenal is jury nullification, a tactic actively being taught to deep blue populations by well-funded NGOs. Revolutionary actors, rioters, agitators, even those committing overt violence, are brought to trial, only for revolutionary jurors, often drawn from captured urban pools, to acquit the guilty despite overwhelming evidence. This blocks the administration of justice outright, shielding the movement's foot soldiers while eroding faith in the system. If scaled successfully, nullifying accountability across cases, it renders legal mechanisms useless in the fight and necessitates an unpleasant shift in tactics. At that point, restoration of order shifts inescapably to kinetic-based warfare, direct suppression of revolutionaries who now operate with impunity under a perverted justice system. It shifts to counter-insurgency warfare. It shifts to recognizing those bringing kinetics and direct action for the revolution as enemy combatants to be dealt with by military means. They must be made to understand the reality of where jury nullification to protect their revolution leads, and all efforts must be made to render it ineffective. The methodology is calculated. Through founding documents, transcendent biblical ethics, and game theory, the pattern emerges plainly. The left escalates incrementally, advances just below the threshold that would provoke a unified, decisive response from the right, and shift the playing field in our favor. NGOs sustain internal subversion without direct kinetic challenge from authorities. Lawfare isolates targets through endless injunctions. Alliances normalize revolutionary rhetoric without triggering backlash, as the sheer mass of persons undertaking these revolutionary activities acts to normalize it and prevent enforcement. At the same time, they provoke deliberately. Isolated incidents, engineered confrontations at enforcement sites, mob actions amplified as resistance, are mimetically cemented as proof of fascist violence. This justifies calls for further escalation, abolition of borders, defunding of police, silencing of dissent, and eventually calls to authorities to step down or be removed by force. The goal is to push the Overton window leftward while portraying any effective counter as illegitimate. Game theory makes the danger clear. This is an iterated contest, not a single battle. The left defects incrementally, escalates below the decisive threshold, while daring the right to cooperate through perpetual restraint. If the right refuses to escalate above the victory threshold, fearing overreach, isolated backlash, or mimetic traps, the left accumulates irreversible gains. Over iterations, total defection wins. We must win every single round perfectly, because once we lose one, the game ends forever. The Republic collapses without a unifying counterstroke. If an optimal strategy is tit for tat, we must make sure, in iterated format, that the response is adequately calibrated to account for the thousands of tats unanswered. Compounding this is profound demoralization. The left is largely viewed as legitimate in all its undertakings because its actions are perceived as just under supplanted Marxist values: equity over equality, collective over individual, revolution over order. This is reinforced by virtually every cultural institution, long since captured, including media, academia, civil society, and religious. Information warfare has tarred true justice from the right as illegitimate. Enforcement of borders becomes racism, defense of life, liberty and property, extremism, adherence to transcendent law, theocracy. The violent splinter tactic, as explained by Stephen Coughlin, accelerates this. The left maintains non-violent mainstream lines while tolerating or directing violent splinters, Antifa, mob actions. The threat of violence normalizes radical demands, give us policy concessions or the splinter acts, while mimetically framing the right's responses as the real violence as per repressive tolerance. This pushes the agenda forward, iteration by iteration. The nature of our future defeat must be faced without illusion. This is not 20th century warfare, where many losers retained dignity, property, or life under occupation with caveats. Historic reality and communist precedent offers no mercy. When revolutionaries prevail, men face slaughter or enslavement without exception. Women, down to puberty, become sex slaves or forced brides. Young children are killed to erase the last vestiges of vanquished lineages. Eastern Europe post-1945 bears witness. Red Army advances brought mass rapes, 2 million German women alone, often in view of families, followed by murder or despair. Gulags swallowed millions into forced labor and death. Hungary, Yugoslavia, Poland repeated the pattern. Liberation meant loot, rape, purge. The same pattern repeated in Cambodia, Cuba, Iran, and Spain. Broader communist history confirms. Cambodia's fields claimed 2 million skulls, children smashed against trees. China's Great Leap and Cultural Revolution devoured tens of millions in famine and frenzy. Ukraine's Holodomor starved millions deliberately under Stalin. The Spanish Civil War saw churches burned, priests executed, nuns' bodies exhumed, and put on display for mockery and humiliation. Venezuela's slow grind previews economic enslavement, as so many of their women have turned to cross-border prostitution to feed their families. Defeat here means the same fate: no respectful terms, no reconstruction aid. The Islamo-Marxist axis and its allies add religious sanction to their atrocity. We win every single time, or we lose. One loss, and the abyss claims all. That's how this works. There are no mulligans, no redos, nobody coming to save us. This is what must be understood to those who contend that a good election result means that we're winning. Even if it is true that we're winning, we're also very close to losing. Just once. Once is all it takes. Incremental accommodation fails the iterated test. Provocation succeeds when met with restraint. Only decisive escalation, unified, transcendent in ethic, above the threshold, secures the Republic. May God raise magistrates who see the pattern and break it. Counterspell Group.